Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to the Just Keep Swimming podcast. It's your friend, your boy, your host, Mr. Adrian Jackson, and we back at it again with another great episode for you. And you already know who I got with me, the man, the myth, the legend, is Mr.
1-3,
a.k.a.
Trois,
a.k.a.
Captain Capper,
Professional, a.k.a.
Donovan Jackson.
There we go.
Yes, sir.
How we doing today, bro?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, brother?
Doing good. My little dress, man.
Appreciate it. Oh, did you see the new earrings?
Yeah, I like the earrings, bro. You shining, man. Yes, I can't wait to get like you.
Feel like you've been had your well. You took them out
they closed, bro. I can't do nothing no more. They done.
Come back.
No more.
Oh,
I'm too old for that now.
Oh, all right. Cool. I mean, at least you honest like that.
Hey, I'm keep it real, man. I don't need the jewelry, bro. I don't need all that shiny no more. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much for joining us again today, live as always. Well, as our new routine now,
yes.
right? Yes,
every month.
Every month we try to join you guys live, so look out for us every month. I'm gonna keep it 100 with you. Next month we have 2 live episodes coming for you guys,
Yes,
some amazing guests. So make sure you guys check it out. But today we have a super duper amazing guest that kind of came randomly, and I am so happy to do this. Beyond excited, I can't wait to do this. So I'm about to introduce him right now. Let's go ahead and bring him to the stage so we can jump right into it. So our amazing guest we have today is former Nevada State Senator Mr. Scott Hammond. Mr. Scott, how are we doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
Yes.
Appreciate it. I don't have any bling to show. Or
No, you good.
You got your ring right?
Yeah, well, that's 32 years in the making right there.
Oh, okay.
I like it. Yeah.
Hey, that's more drip than anybody.
Yes, more than me. I don't even got my beads on right now. That's how bad it is.
Oh.
It's all good. But Ms. Scott, I just want to say thank you for joining us today. Definitely such short notice. I know we actually got in contact with you Wednesday to do this episode, and you jumped right on it. So I just want to say I appreciate you so much for this, sir.
I'm looking forward to having a good time today. And, today, this afternoon, tonight, making sure that we just have a good discussion, but having a good time. And, when I got the invite, I thought, this is going to be fun.
Yes. Yeah, it should be fun. I feel we shouldn't get too deep. It should be fun. I'm enjoying it. I'm looking forward to it. Mm-hmm. But let's go ahead and dive right into it, Scott. Sure. So I know when PJ introduced me to you saying that we have a former Nevada senator, my first question is what is a senator at all? Like, what does a senator actually do for the people? I never actually understood something like that.
Well, as senator in the state of Nevada, it's an elected position, right? Where we're representatives of a certain geographic area. Mm-hmm. But in truth, once you get elected, you really should be representing the whole body of the state of Nevada. I mean, you represent your area, mm-hmm. and my geographic area was in the Northwest here. Mm-hmm. But really, you have to keep in mind the totality of the state and where the state needs to be going. Because mm-hmm. what we do is we create laws. We pass laws. We send them over to the governor's office to be signed into law. Mm-hmm. I think that's the main thing. But we represent people, their ideas, their hopes, and we try to represent them the best we can. And so I did that with legislation I brought, or when I had to contemplate bills that other people were bringing. I mean, you really want to make sure that you're paying attention to what people are bringing, right?
Yeah.
They bring a law and they say, hey, we think this has some merit to it. And you go, okay, let me see if it has merit to it. And sometimes you agreed with them and sometimes you didn't. But you had to be, I thought you had to be civil. You try to be civil. And I think that's kind of what's lacking right now is a little bit more civility in our legislative process. But pretty much that's what we do. And, I try to stay connected to the people. And I'll tell you that the best example that I can come up with is there were two times in my legislative career. Mm-hmm. And I was there as an assemblyman and as a senator about 13 years total. Oh, wow. I stepped down during my last year that I could have been in there on 14th, but 13 years is a long time.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And aside from passing legislation, instead of talking to constituents all the time, just aside from that, there were a couple of instances where I felt like I had to be one with the people. One was there was a fire up on Mount Charleston, the Carpenter Fire, and I want to say that was probably 2012, 2013. Mm-hmm. And I remember I just thought, I got to be there. I got to try and get information for people because there were a lot of people who couldn't go to back up to their homes. Mm-hmm. Maybe they were living in other places and they had a summer home up there. They just didn't have information. So I got in touch with everybody I needed to, was able to go up they took me up there as often. I didn't get in the helicopter. Tried.
Tried.
I really wanted to get an aerial view. I wanted to see what was going on, but I went up there several times when nobody else was allowed to,
Oh, wow.
and I reported from there. And I made sure everybody knew. I kept everybody on social media updated on what was going on.
Beautiful.
If I saw somebody's house, I said, I went to whatever house, and this is it's still there. The trees. I mean, just kind of updated everybody. And I remember about 2 years later, I met somebody. She owned a company, and she kind of looked at me. She goes, "Wait a second. Let me think for a second." It took her a second, but she said, "I think I remember. You're Senator Hammond. You went up to the Carpenter Fire like all the time. I lived and died by your reporting."
Oh, wow.
She goes, I had to know what was going on, and you were the only person who would do that.
Oh, wow.
Same thing occurred when COVID hit.
Mm-hmm.
Everything shut down.
Right.
The governor shut everything down. And the governor really wasn't sharing a lot of information at the time. That was, if I'm going to criticize him for something, it'd be that for sure. I mean, Governor Sisolak had some difficulties, but that was like the major thing that I had is that during COVID, he just would not communicate with people.
Oh, wow.
And I started doing weekly town hall meetings, live town hall meetings where I just had people come on. So this is one of those things that, I felt like was different, but it was still part of my duties.
Right.
I think I had, when people were saying when you do a town hall, you might get 4,000 people listening to you. I had over 20,000 people listening.
Oh, wow.
They were starved for information.
Yeah.
And so I would bring on guests like you guys do, right? But it would be more like, what is the DMV doing? What can people do while this is all shut down, but they've got to register their car?
Right.
Or, I'd have somebody from the DETR, which is the Department of Education, Training, and Rehabilitation, the ones who are doing the unemployment insurance. I mean, I had all those people on, and people were starved for information. So that was one of those things that I did.
Right, and that's beautiful right there because I do remember being one of those people starved for information because I did get laid off during COVID, and I do actually remember logging into town hall meetings just to try to figure out what's going on with the city. Where can I even go look for work now? Is there any work right now?
Right.
Or do I just have to sit back and wait?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So no, I think that's beautiful. I'm so glad that you did. And I do remember seeing your face. When PJ sent me your picture, I was like, he looks so familiar. But now I finally realize where I know you from now. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, I can go to a grocery store. Most people don't know who I am. It's not a super sexy job. I used to tell, because I was teaching high school when I first got elected, and all the students go, "Oh man, you're like really famous." I go, "No, I can go to a grocery store. Nobody knows who I am. I still go home and I change poopy diapers. I take out the garbage.
Right.
I do all of the normal things everybody does."
Right. So you're just a normal human being like we all are.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's amazing because, a lot of people, we see people that are in positions of power and we automatically assume, oh, they're better than everybody, or, he drives a Maserati and lives in, hustling money, whatever the case may be. We have all these negative thoughts and intentions toward you guys. And I'm loving to hear that you're just a normal human being.
And it doesn't help though when somebody does get into politics and just sort of detaches themselves from society. They want to be filmed because they want to be in front of a camera, show people the average Joe. But then they go to a grocery store and then they, the checker is taking it and putting it across the scanner, and they're like, you could see in their eyes, they don't even know what that scanner is. They haven't been shopping for years, right? Because they sent somebody else there. That's not us. In the state of Nevada, we are citizen legislators, and we are as much attached to our regular life. The only time that we're up in Carson City is every other year, an odd number of years, for about 120 days. The rest of the time, we're right there, just living life, trying to figure out, the bumps and bruises that occur in the economy. We just kind of live life and then see, where we might be able to make a difference.
Right. So another question for you. Did you find it difficult to be, I guess the best way I can explain it is to be a soldier on the field, but then have to be a general in the courtroom? You have to see what's going down in like you say, in your area, but then at the same time, you have to go and report up to the higher people and let them know what's going on. Did you find that difficult at times to, I guess, be that middleman?
Yeah, so if I'm understanding the question, sometimes the difficulty was when I had to leave my job for 4 months, I had to take a leave of absence from my job. I was a school teacher. I taught high school. And then later on, I actually worked for the Nevada Contractors Association. And it was difficult. And I was thankful for my employment with the Nevada Contractors Association because they kind of understood that every other year I was going to be interrupted with my job. But as far as taking the message to being that on the field and being in the field and understanding and being that foot soldier, but then going up and then reporting back to the generals what's going on, no, I didn't find it too hard because, you know, we really were the ones who were saying, okay, we understand what people are going through.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna make decisions, you know, and I would listen to the other foot soldiers, my fellow legislators, and they would come and say, hey, we really think this is necessary. And there's a lot of good legislation that came.
Right.
But sometimes you had to go, I think that this is, you know, in the list of priorities, this is probably more important if we can't get everything. And that's the thing about legislation that I want a lot of people to understand is that it really is, legislating is about looking at finite resources. You know, we have a few infinite resources, but a lot of what we deal with is finite resources. And so what we're trying to do is figure out how to allocate those resources, those finite resources. We're going to give so much of that resource here, here, and here, but we don't have enough to give down to here or here. So we have to make these decisions that are always very difficult.
That's tough, yeah.
You know, if everything were finite or infinite, if everything were infinite, it'd be easy to make those choices. But they're finite resources, and so there would be that tussle about which, you know, what do you think is priority number one? What do you think is priority number one, and so forth.
Right.
And so that was some of the arguments. And I'll tell you, I really came to appreciate having that discussion, even with people who didn't always think the same way I did. You know, people of the other party, or sometimes people in my own party, but a different region of Nevada. And I really liked having that discussion because at least I felt like there was stability there. Like we were trying to figure out what was best for everybody.
Right.
I was gonna say, if I were to ask, do you have like some of the most difficult decisions? Can you explain one of the most difficult decisions that you ever had to make as a senator?
Yeah, I tell you, there was a couple, but one comes to mind, and I remember it was like 2000. I think it was the 2017 session, and you know, I was in the minority party, and it was either 2017 or 19. I think it might have been 19, and there was a whole lot of talk about abortion.
Yeah.
And typically, abortion is not something we deal with at the state level. Right. There was a constitutional, and I'm sorry, there was not a constitutional, but it was a definite movement, a grassroots movement here in the state of Nevada back in, I want to say, the 90s. I couldn't be getting that wrong. But they basically enshrined the right to an abortion in statute. That the only way you could overturn that is by a vote of the people again. You know, it was out of our hands. But they wanted to create this constitutional amendment to preserve it in the Constitution. I struggle with it because as a father of 4, and my wife and I adopted 3 children, it was hard. And I tell you, I knew that someone was going to bring the bill. I had heard that a certain legislator was going to bring the bill before the session began. What that means is they were writing the bill. It was already submitted to what we call the Legislative Council Bureau. They're the ones who write up our bills after we come up with an idea. We go to them, we come up with an idea, and we say, hey, can you write it in the legalese? And they do it because we have a legal division that does that for us. And they wrote it all up. And, I mean, I knew that this was coming. And it had been on it was on my mind, my thoughts. I remember I went to my religious leader and I said, I need a blessing before I go up there. I really want to be clear-headed when I go up there because I knew at some point when we had a hearing on the bill, it was going to be a 6 to 8 hour hearing, and you know, with all these people saying, "This is why we need to have the abortion law. We want to have the right to terminate a child's life," and I'm going to hear 8 hours of that. And I keep, you know, in my mind, I kept thinking about how wonderful these women were that said, "I'm going to bring this pregnancy to fruition, and then I'm going to give you the greatest gift anybody can ever give anybody, right? I'm going to place my child in your hands, and I want you to raise that child. And I'm going to be looking at 8 hours of people talking about why they need to terminate a pregnancy. And it's hard because I get what they want. They want choice. But at the same time, I'm thinking it's such a beautiful life. And I don't want to hear 8 hours of it. So that was a hard decision. I know that was difficult.
Yeah, and that was a really tough time. Like it was on social media, everybody was talking about it for a long time too. Well, kudos to you for sticking
those are hard.
The best thing.
I mean, you can imagine, right, going through that. I mean, you can see both sides sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, and I can understand because, like you said, you're in a place to make decisions for not just based off how you feel, but based off of what's right for a majority. Or for your, like you said, your sector, your section that you have to represent. So I can understand like the difficulties of making one decision that affects so many people, and it's part scary at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But it sounds scary.
Well, and to your point, I remember when I first got here, one of my college professors was Professor Dina Titus, who's now a congresswoman.
Okay.
And so I was in her classes a lot, and we'd go over these typologies. Typology of there's this type of representative, there's A, B, C, and one of them is, hey, are you going to be the representative who looks at the majority of or the cross section of your district and then try to vote how they would want to, or are you going to be that typology, that type of legislator who says, hey, this is who I am. You voted for me knowing who I am, and I'm going to vote who I am.
Right.
Or are you going to be a cross section of those? Kind of at times you vote the best you know how because of what you know, or and then maybe mix in some of the needs of the district as you understand your district and the demographics of your district.
Right.
And so that weighed on my mind too. It's like, I mean, I am a father of 4, and I believe in adoption. But at the same time, I know that a lot of the constituents I have want access to this particular right as they see it. And so that weighed on me.
Right. I was going to say, what type, and I know you mentioned you went to like your religious leader and stuff like that, and I heard that you're into the church. What other avenues or, access did you have to kind of help make those tough decisions to keep your level head? Well,
my other legislators too.
Yeah.
I told you we have a citizens legislature here, and so your other legislators, regardless sometimes of party, you go to them and they have expertise in some areas. For this, we struggled with that, but we also struggled with the bill that would have brought in death with dignity, as they called it, euthanasia, right? Yeah. And so I'd go to he's the mayor of Boulder City now, but former Senator Joe Hardy, and we'd have these long discussions on what is morally right, what are some of the implications that you're worried about, with that particular issue.
The abortions.
The euthanasia one.
Okay, gotcha.
For example, a lot of people say, well, if my time comes and it looks like I've got a fatal disease that my doctors are telling me I've got 6 months, I should be able to terminate my life when I want, with dignity, right? And I thought, well, that's not a bad argument, but at the same time, what if you're told you're going to live 6 months and it's now a year, 2 years,
exactly.
And you've got this, and you already went to the physicians, they told you, so then you went to the pharmacist and you got the medications that they told you could get, right? They said, get this medication, that medication, and when you want to, you can self-medicate and terminate your life. That's kind of how it works, and I'm oversimplifying it.
Yeah.
But so now you've got it at your home, and then you've got your grandson who's
Walking
saying,
around.
hey,
Yeah, playing the cabinet.
you've been here 2 years longer than I thought you were going to be, and we're kind of ready for you to move on, and just mix it in a drink or whatever. I mean,
Right,
and then they say, well, there's a certain
that, yeah.
smell, there's a certain thing that can happen. I'm like, yeah, but the part of the legislation that Doc and I would talk about is, and here's the crux of it is, that piece of legislation says that if you die from taking that medication, it's assumed that you died from the disease that would have killed you, and they don't do an autopsy, or they don't do an investigation.
Wow.
So they don't do an investigation. And I said, so morally, I'm thinking that's kind of, I don't know if I really want to pass something like that. I mean, so these are, look, we were staying up late at night, going through, the good and the bad of both of these bills and many others. I mean, this is just a small sample. Those two right there. I was there for several sessions. So, yeah.
Wow.
That's tough.
Yeah. These are tough.
That's crazy. So another question I had, just because I heard you were saying earlier, you heard down the grapevine that somebody was going to bring something up at the meeting. So do you consider, I guess we say like the government has a lot of he say, she say, word of vine, gossip going around, or like is it a lot of just word of mouth and stuff? Or?
Well, there's a lot of gossip, but eventually it all comes out, right? Because you have to submit the bill. I mentioned earlier, in the state of Nevada, we do things a little bit different, right? We have the Citizens Legislature, and we have this thing called the LCB. The LCB is the Legislative Council Bureau. And it is a nonpartisan part of our government, in the legislative branch. They're there to help all legislators regardless of party, right? They serve both Republicans and Democrats, or independents. We have an independent, which we did once. And so you go to them. And so if I have a particular idea for a bill, right, let's say I want to do, I actually proposed a bill that created the Asian American Heritage Day, right?
Mm.
And I take it to the LCB. They are not allowed to tell anybody else that I submitted the bill or what the bill is about.
Mm.
They can say, however, if somebody submits something, they can say, hey, we have somebody else who submitted something very similar. Would you like me to tell that legislator that you're doing it as well? And then I could say, no, I don't want you to. I'm going to go ahead and submit it anyway.
Mm.
But if I said, oh yeah, I didn't know they were submitting it, then they might say, hey, Senator Hammond, Assemblyman so-and-so has already got this bill or wants to do this bill. Would you like to contact him and see if you guys want to work together? So they keep everything very secret, right?
Mm.
So there are some rumors out there before session begins.
Yeah.
Some of that hearsay, and sometimes you get that from lobbyists who are also working the scene.
Mm.
But it all comes out eventually. If there's a bill, it's going to come out on day 1 or day 2, 3, or 2 weeks in.
Right.
They have to disclose. I mean, eventually, if it's going to be a bill, it's got to be disclosed, right?
Right.
You got to introduce them, then you got to assign them to committees and things like that.
Love it.
Yeah.
So I know now that you're a former senator. Like
Yeah.
you said, you resigned, you took a new position, and
Yeah.
to my understanding, you're the executive director of the Office of Workforce Innovation. I believe I'm correct. Owen?
That is correct. Owen, yeah.
So what exactly is Owen? We're just curious.
It's a super sexy job.
It sounds sexy.
Yeah.
Owen.
Yeah, I get all dressed up for it and everything. Owen. Actually, back in 2017, we changed the name of Owen. It used to be that the office, the legislature voted on this in 2017 when we created it. It was designed to try and look at how we get the workforce ready for the future.
Mm.
Right? We know that schools are changing, the factory style model of schools, where you come in at a certain time, the bell rings, you go from one class to another, you sit in, rows of chairs and you listen to a teacher for 50, 55 minutes. We know that that's changing and for good, right?
Yeah.
The old factory style model is out, right? I mean, it's beyond industrial revolution time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to figure out how do you get a workforce ready for the future as well, in conjunction with that and other things. And so we created this office, and we called it Owen. And then in 2017, 2021, we decided that we were going to change the office. We're going to move it from the governor's office and then put it under Dieter, which is the UI, the Department of Education, Training, and Rehabilitation.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so we put it under Dieter, and when we did that, we changed the name from Owen to Goen. The governor's office of workforce innovation, which made me laugh at the time because you're getting it away from the governor, but now you're going to call it the governor's office. So but now we still go by Owen.
Okay.
But the real thing is that my office, we're sort of the as it's been described to me, we're sort of the point guard, the spearhead when we have to put something together, and we have to come up with a pathway or a program. My job is to kind of, as the field general, get all the other entities, whether they're governmental agencies or they're private entities. Like if I want to have a discussion, and right now I'm talking to Cheyenne High School, they want to have a pathway, not just having classes. Chi-town. Oh, do we have some in the house? Oh yeah, a couple right here.
Oh, you went to Chi-town too?
Oh yeah, look at that. I better not talk about Chi-town.
I went to the hobby, so I don't care. You say what you want to say about that.
Oh, okay. I want the Rattlers.
Yeah, the Rattlers.
Yeah,
Yeah, the Hobby Rattlers.
And I'm Clark, so
the Chargers.
Yeah, Chargers.
We worked with Clark as well. We set up a program there because you have what we call CTE, right? Which is CTE is career and technical education,
Okay.
and it can run the gamut of healthcare. It could be the trades, and a lot of different things. Anything that gives you a skill, right? That's CTE programming. And it's nice, we're developing more of that. We have more programs out there. But one of the things that we really need to look at is changing, not just having those programs, but having a pathway. So why are we taking this class? We should take this class in conjunction with a math class that makes sense that goes with that, with an English class, and then have a pathway where we're doing a real, internship that goes along with that,
Right.
or work-based learning, or something that gives you a lot of experience before you get out of high school. So,
Right.
so everything you're doing in high school leads to a career,
Right.
a fulfilling, real career that as you are in that job, you look around and go, hey, well, maybe I want to go do this. Well, maybe that takes more education, maybe another credential, maybe a micro-credential, maybe a certificate, maybe a 2-year university degree, maybe go on to 4-year. But I see that this is all kind of changing. Well, that's what the office does. And so when I'm talking to Cheyenne, you guys can go now. Yeah. Everybody's like, yeah. When I'm talking to Cheyenne, we're looking at, okay, we're going to do a program in trades. Okay, so who are we going to bring in? We're going to bring in Nevada Contractors Association. I'm going to bring in some of the trade unions. We brought in the laborers. We also brought in Southern Nevada building trades. And we bring in the city of North Las Vegas because Cheyenne is right there in that area. They want people to graduate, get jobs, and stay in the area. So we're working in collaboration with them. So I'm the spearhead. Owen is the spearhead. We kind of get everybody together that needs to be in that discussion, and we bring them in and we go, okay, what are we going to do? We do the same thing right now. We're doing a grant application for a tech hub. We got the first phase, and this was before I came on board. UNR was spearheading this. They brought in phase 1 of this tech hub, where they're looking at lithium and then trying to, create this lithium loop here in the state of Nevada. The mining, the manufacturing, the recycling, all those things, right? And all the jobs are going to go along with it. Jobs we don't even know what they are yet.
Right.
Yeah. And so now we're in phase 2 of this tech hub, which is it's a $70 million grant over 5 years. You leverage it with some other private donations, and it's probably going to be, if we get it, about $100 million. Right? And so now I'm bringing in, again, industry. We're bringing in the mining. We're talking to folks at Redwood who are the recycling up north. We're talking to schools. They're talking about creating 50,000 jobs in 5 years. That's $10,000 or 10,000 jobs a year.
Right.
Some of those people who they're going to hire in that 5th year are probably going to be freshmen this fall.
Right, just getting out of high school by then.
So you have to create a whole program around a pathway, right?
Yeah.
How do we create this pathway? Not just taking a few classes that give you skills, but the right skills. We talk to the employees. We talk to the employers and say, what do you want out of somebody who graduates from high school? Right?
Instead of just like a generalized education based.
Right.
Yeah.
You're being very specific, and you're saying, what is the pathway? At Clark High School, we helped them create, when I worked for the Nevada Contractors Association, we helped Clark establish this pathway for kids who wanted to get into to be electricians. So we established a program, they did, at the school, and then we connected them to industry partners like Helix Electric. I'm going to get the other ones wrong. I'll take suggestions from the audience. GSL and Berg Electric, and we basically they choose a certain number of juniors and seniors every year and give them a scholarship, which leads to an apprenticeship, right?
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And so you really are trying to create pathways, meaningful. You're not sitting in your. I don't know about you guys, but I sat in my class once in a while. And we had nice big windows, so we could just daydream. You been there?
Yeah.
No, it's not. I find it beautiful because I'm sitting here like I said, I went to Mojave. I was lucky enough that when I joined my freshman year, they just started the Gear Up program through UNLV.
Yep.
And I literally just said like, yo, this Gear Up program is the reason I got to college, because if I didn't have Gear Up, I was not on the path, or I didn't even know the path to get there, and Gear Up really helped me show the path to get to where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
So programs like that are amazing.
Yeah, because I'd sit there in my class and go, in algebra, going, when am I ever going to use this, right?
Exactly.
And so I don't want to sit there and daydream. I want to find out why am I in this class, and if I'm in the trades, I want to be in a math class that makes sense, or an English class. So I should be reading blueprints or making sense of the education you're getting.
Right.
And I hope that things are changing enough that all the counselors out there start to go, okay, we can't just send everybody to college.
Yeah.
It's just not. It's not
Right.
feasible. It's not viable, right? Because you probably had lots of friends who went to college for a year and said, "This isn't for me."
That was me, because I did computer engineering for UNR for 2 years, but it was all the extra class like English and stuff like that. I was kind of already proficient to type up that, but I had to go back to English to do it all over again. Luckily, I was in MSAT, and that kicked me up in math. So by the time I started, it was Calc 3, and I did computer engineering. So that just helped out figuring out the algorithms. But the other classes, it felt like I was just wasting my time, and especially since I wasn't hardcore dedicated on college yet or what I wanted to do, it just kind of gave away my ambition for it. So I was like, let me just reset. And then now I'm taking psychology, which University of Phoenix, it seems like it's gearing me a little bit better than it was for going to UNR.
Yeah.
So
Is it easier though taking the classes now that you know what you really want to
yes,
do?
100%.
I was
Yes,
just about to say that.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I feel like I'm actually doing something confidently,
Yeah.
like especially the word confidently, that towards what I want to do in life.
Exactly.
So,
And you're more proficient at it.
yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then you're gonna absorb better.
yes.
So and I want that experience for everybody. I think it helps. Like I didn't finish college until I was 28.
Mhm.
I did a lot of other things in between,
Mhm.
and then I had to also work to make some money and that kind of thing. But by the time I graduated, 28, I really knew what I mean. When I went back to school at 25, 26, I mean, I knew what I really wanted to do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It was easier,
Yeah.
better grades,
Yes.
Better focus.
Yes.
Yeah. And I tell my mentee that all the time. Like, yo, I understand you want to go to college because everybody tells you to, but it's like, know the reason you want to go. If not, let's go do a trade school and try to get your skills going right now and make money. And your idea for college may come later.
Yeah.
Of like, oh, I want to do this, and then now we know where you're going. Don't just go and take general electives or what is it called?
general ed.
Yeah.
General ed,
Yeah.
a non-selected. And it's like, well, that's 2 years wasted.
I mean, along with that, like you also get the work experience. So like, you're even more qualified by the time you finish your education, and like you're actually being looked at by these employers to actually pick you up.
Yeah.
So
And if you go to a trade or you get a certificate in something that you do have an interest in, then you're enjoying what you're doing, and you look around and you find out, well, I can still be in this industry, or I can still be in this genre, right? But I can also there's a higher ceiling than I thought. There's other jobs within here, and all I have to do is go back to school later on, but I know what classes I need to take.
Exactly.
Yes.
I know the reason I'm going now.
Right. I mean, even I think a lot of people in construction, when I was working for NCA, I think a lot of the students were sort of shocked to find out, hey, it's not just about picking up a shovel and digging a ditch. There are a lot of jobs that require lots of different types of certification, right?
Yeah.
But you can get a job working in the industry when you're 18, and getting paid, $55,000, $60,000 a year, which for an 18, 19-year-old,
Amazing. Yeah.
that's amazing, right? But then there's a ladder you can climb, right? And I think that's what we need to also make sure the counselors in high schools are more proficient in knowing what's out there, instead of saying, hey, college is for everybody, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And you'll figure it out there.
Yeah.
So, I truly
Also to
agree.
make sure they're passionate about trying to get those kids there too. So,
Yes.
okay, if I had a question, like what do you think of the current education system just in general? I know Nevada's kind of like low on the ladder compared to the rest of the, country, but what do you think about that? And what do you think could be fixed along with the, the geared programming?
Well, I don't have a silver bullet for everything. I don't. Although education was one of those that I really, I got into because I was a high school teacher, I was a basketball coach, I was a softball coach. I mean, I really loved being a teacher. It's one of the 5 things I tell everybody. If you want to be a good decision maker, you have to know who you are, and to know who you are, make a list of those things, and it'll help you to make the decisions. Well, being a teacher was one of those that was on my 5 things. Right, I make decisions based off being a the girls' basketball coach is what I was, and a teacher after that, and things like that, right? So I really get into education. I'm actually really a big proponent of educational choice. I think right now we need to open that up. We need to allow people. There's a platform that needs to be created where people can come in and deliver education different than other people right now.
Right.
With the public education system, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that it tends to be cookie cutter, right?
Yeah.
You have this, and this is how we're going to deliver to everybody, not taking into consideration the different areas of the city, the state, the demographics change, the dynamics change. I said, you really have to have some really robust school choice.
Right.
Aside from that, you really also have to consider how things are changing, right? I told you that, I'm really into this pathway idea. About 7 years ago, the economy changed. We have a skills-based economy, where the more skills you have, the more opportunities you will have.
Right.
My grandfather's generation, and again, I'm old, older than you all.
Older than me, yeah.
Yeah, if my grandfather's generation, he had one job, his whole life, one career, that was it. My father had about 3 different jobs. He was in the Navy. He worked, I think, can't remember what his first job was, but career. Then he was in the Navy, and then he got out, and then he worked at a boiler plant at a VA hospital in Queens for the rest of his life, right? I was told when I was younger I'd have about 5 different careers.
Oh, wow.
And it's true. It turned out to be true. And I started later, with my full-time job. My wife still laughs. She's like, "You took forever to figure out what you were going to do." I know, and I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to grow up, right? But I've had about 5 different kind of careers, and I probably have 6 or 7 before I'm done. But my 16-year-old, when I heard this, she was probably 12, and they said that 12-year-olds, the person I was talking to, she was giving a lecture, and she said, with the gig economy the way it is, with all these private contractors, the kids who are 12 years old now, who are now 16, 17, they'll probably have 20 careers a year.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Yeah,
Because you'll have a skill set, and you'll say, "Oh, I'm going to look and see what job I can do right now. I can do this job for 4 months, because the skill set I have." Right?
Yeah.
Like this right here is your career for a little bit.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
But then you have other things you're doing, and so that's change. That right there changes everything, guys.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna say, I feel like I've felt that where I am now. Like, yeah, this podcast is part of it. I make music. I worked at Domino's, and then I worked at Aldo, and then I worked at a nutrition stop, got a little certification there to teach nutrition.
Yep.
Got out of there, went as a math director at Mathnasium, and then now I'm working at a bank. Like, all these different skills.
But it's all skills, yeah.
Yeah,
And you put them on this resume. You've got skills.
And I think I was able to walk into this bank interview very confidently. Like, I don't need it. I have the skills. I know I can do it. Like, but now it's like, do I want to work with you? And then that was just an open discussion, and that was like the best conversation. I don't even want to call it an interview. Yeah, it was the best conversation I've ever had.
I just got this image. I just got this thought when you said skills, and I was like Spike Lee was talking about. You got skills, right?
Yeah, skills.
I'm like, but that's the thing. You got a whole list of them. So one of the things I want to create in my new job as a director of Owen, in working with Dieter and all these other folks, I want to create a platform that basically has on it all the internship possibilities throughout the whole state. Beautiful. It's like a one-stop shop. You can go, hey, this is the pathway I want, and in this internship, this platform will be very connected so that you can go on there and see, okay, if I want to do this, where can I go to school? And it'll pop up. These are different places. These are different classes. This is class 1 you might want to take. You can take it here. This is how much it would cost. We have all this stuff on here, but then internships will be on there. But you'll also have on there the ability to put your digital wallet. So you would go on there, Mr. Jackson, and you would say, these are the skills I have. And then if an employer says, I'm looking for this many employees in doing this, then you might get a notification saying, hey, they're looking for these people. Would you like to put your wallet, out there for them to see? And so I'm working on that right now. We're hoping to get funding for that. But it will revolutionize the way we are looking at and getting employment. We're creating that pathway that I told you is so desperately needed.
And it gives people hope to actually get where they want to go, even
though
where
they fit. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, get where they fit and feel home. That's beautiful. I think that would be amazing. Yeah. So one of my other questions for you then I'm going to get into our personal, but I'm curious to know, which position do you like better currently? Did you like being the center better, or do you like your new position, Owen, better?
Well, yeah.
Just curious.
It's live, so I'm going to take my time here. So I love being a senator. Don't get me wrong. I loved it. I loved working with people. I still do. I mean, that's the top thing that I still get to do. It did wear on me, though. When you have the mantle of responsibility, after a while, that mantle gets heavy. And it was time for me to step down for a little while. And do something else. And this was for me, it's a creative outlet, because the way I look at education, the way I look at workforce development, I'm not saying I'm out there, further ahead than other people. I'm just saying that these ideas come to me, and I love working with people because I find out that a lot of other people had somewhat of a similar idea, but maybe we could do it, we can implement it this way. I love the creative aspects of it. And so I really like the current job I have. And it was time for me to move on from being senator. I loved it. It felt weird at first when I got rid of it. It felt like the mantle fell off, and I just felt light. And I was bouncing around. It was great. It was wonderful. There was a sense of loss. My daughter cried.
Oh wow.
For my family, they were invested. I mean, most of my kids only knew that part of my life. That was all they ever knew. They knocked doors with me. They went to events with me. They knew the people. They met everybody. They loved being that political family. They just loved being involved. And I didn't realize it, but I wrote that letter, my resignation letter, and I sent it in. And my wife had told my daughter, that I sent it in, and she cried for a while.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
That's crazy.
It tore at her. And here I am, just like I'm
Free.
bouncing. Yeah,
I'm free. I got no time now.
I'm floating. Yeah.
Sad? No, I understand that one.
It was just time, and you probably felt it in your life, the passage of time, and when things, when one thing was done, and you had a feeling that was done, that chapter was done, and you had to move on. That's kind of how I felt. Somebody asked me if I was going to run for another office. I said not right away, but I'm not ruling it out because I do like serving people. I like that aspect of it, and I like being around a lot of people and getting ideas. But it was time to move on for them.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. So cool. So now let's take a step back now. So I'm just curious to learn more about you in general and who you are as a person. So I guess one of my first questions is like, did you always have this like thought in your mind that you wanted to be a senator or somebody in the office? Or like, how did this even come about for you? 'Cause I know you saying that it took you a while before you actually found what you wanted to do. So I'm just curious, like, how did you even find this?
Well, the beauty is I can always tell people, if you don't like what I do or how I voted or anything like that, you can blame my wife. Because there's some truth to that. It was my wife years ago, and it's funny because my wife knows me, or she did when we were first married. It's funny because my wife's an excellent judge of character. She can size you up. I know that everybody says you can't judge a book by its cover, but she does a pretty good job right from the beginning, And you make snap judgments sometimes because you need to. And she's just really good at it. Her intuition is amazing, but she also is good at kind of saying, hey, this is what you're good at. She's the one who said you need to be a teacher. Because that wasn't what I always wanted to do. I loved languages. I served a 2-year mission for my church, right? I was in Portugal for 2 years. I picked up Portuguese. And then I went on a study abroad at UNLV. I went down to Chile and I picked up Spanish.
Oh wow!
I knew some Italian because my family, my stepmother's Italian, and her whole family was always speaking Italian. So there's all these languages running around, mostly Romance languages. And I thought I really want to be a part of the embassy corps. I really want to work in embassies, travel, kind of stuff. That's what I really want to do. And my wife said, "Oh, that's nice. I'll help you." And she was okay when I went. I was married when I went to Chile, and she's like, "Go ahead. You need to do this." But in the back of her mind, she's like, "You know what you need to do? You need to be a teacher. You just have a really good gift. You're just patient with kids, and you really like being around. There's an energy you bring." And sure enough, that's what I ended up doing, and I enjoyed it. I loved coaching. I was a student council advisor. I just love the students. When I see the students now, I just light up because those are my students, right?
Right.
And I have a lot of them who just they see me and they start crying. I'm like, man, you had an impact. You had something in life.
Yeah.
And it's really, I love that about my students. I see them and I just light up.
Right.
But she was really into it. But then she said, you need to run for office. You'd be really good at that. You're even keeled. You don't get super overly excited. You don't get depressed. You listen to people. You really care about people. She goes, you're going to be in office one day.
Oh, wow.
I was studying political science. I have a master's degree in political science from UNLV.
Okay.
And so I really loved comparing political systems, right? I went down to Chile and I learned Spanish, but I was really studying a lot about what happened in 1973 with Pinochet and Allende. And, I really loved, listening to poems by Pablo Neruda. I mean, I just really is into the whole Chilean culture.
That's right.
And I liked that, but my wife said, you're going to run for office one day. You really should. And so she kind of pushed me out there. And she said, that's going to be it. So I always tell people, if you don't like what I'm doing,
it's her fault.
Yeah, I go see her.
But that's such an amazing support system,
yeah,
too.
That is, though. That is, though. And I think that's beautiful when it's always interesting when somebody tells you, you'll be really good at this. And you're like, I don't know. But then it comes out to be true.
Yeah.
Mr. PJ's done that for me recently. So, yes, I understand it.
Well, sometimes you got to step out of yourself or allow other people to do that, right? If somebody else is kind of watching and they're not caught up in the trappings of every day where you're bogged down in the minutia of life, sometimes somebody else isn't seeing your capacity.
Right.
Or the ability, or the capacity that you haven't reached yet, but they can see that in you, and then they encourage you. They have faith in you.
Yeah,
it's great to have somebody like that. That's somebody you're going to stay with for 32 years, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You're going to have up and downs. You're going to be mad at each other. You're going to be happy, but you're still going to that's the person you want in your corner.
Exactly.
That person trusts you and loves you, and so, you know, just it's amazing, right? And that's kind of my wife has been for almost 33 years coming up.
Yes.
Congrats.
Yes. Love
Yeah.
it. Yes, love it. Congratulations on that. Shout out to Miss Scott's wife,
Tanya.
Tanya. Shout out to Miss
Tanya.
Tanya. Thank you for thank you for.
Oh, and my
Thanks for
kids, I tell you, my kids, they all been like my son Tomas would go out there and knock on doors. My daughter, when she was 2-3 years old, she was knocking on doors. You know, I was on the floor of the assembly. It was a Saturday, and we had about 2 weeks left. It was a Saturday because we had to get the budgeting done, and nobody knew it except for one other person in the whole legislative building. This lady named Assemblywoman Master Luca. I had told her because, you know, I confided in her. She was the chair of one of my committees, and I said, you know, my wife and I are in the process of adopting one more child.
Mm.
The birth mother was in Alaska, and I said she's supposed to come at the end of session, like 2-3 weeks after session. I said, but if anything happens, you know, like we have doctor's appointments or we're doing whatever, I may have to leave. So she knew. But it was on that Saturday. I'm sitting there at my desk on the floor of the assembly, and I get this text from the birth grandmother up in Alaska saying, your daughter's coming today. And I'm like, what? And so she's texting me, I'm texting my wife, and then finally she said, it's happening. And I remember I asked for, you can ask for like a 1-minute recess, you know, and then, you know, that sometimes they granted. I remember asking for it. I don't think they understood what I said. I don't even know if I said it correctly. I was so joyous, and it was great, and I just took off. And then when I came back, they said, you know, Assemblyman Hammond, you have something to announce? And I said, yeah. And I told everybody that my daughter was born right then and there, you know. But I didn't get to go see her for like 2 weeks. My wife took off right away.
Okay.
She went up there, and she was up there within 24 hours, I believe. And then took, you know, she was there for the rest of the remaining time until I got up there. But that kind of shows you that my family they were ensconced in this, man. They really were invested.
Right.
Everything was about, you know, the political process, you know.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's a blessing.
That's a blessing.
That's
Yeah,
a
that's
blessing.
a true team right there. You know,
Yeah.
to make sure whatever happens, we're gonna make sure it happens. So you can do what you need to do, but we got this handle on our side.
And the beautiful part was my daughter Isabella, or Issa, we call her Issa, but Isabella. She spent a lot of time with me in my last session. The last couple of weeks she was with me, and on the day that would have been her birthday, we were on the floor of the assembly for, you know, we had a speaker come in. I think it was one of the delegates from the House of Representatives or Senator, somebody come in, and so we were there, and I took her up to the seat. I said, this is where I was.
Oh wow.
This is where I was when you were born.
Wow.
And it was a full circle kind of moment, right?
Yeah.
That's really
The end of the
cool.
career.
That's really cool. I love that. I love to hear it. So also remember hearing you saying that you were religious as well. And I'm just curious on how were you able to balance out the religion and politics? Because from my understanding, I know that sometimes they don't go hand in hand and they kind of butt heads a lot. So I was just curious, how were you able to balance that?
That's a great question, actually. So I remember it was my freshman year, or maybe it was my freshman year in the Senate, and somebody said to me, you know, Senator, you kind of need to leave your religion at the door.
Oh wow.
And make decisions that way. They didn't like the fact that I was religious, and I said, you know, I think it's disingenuous that you would ask me to do that, because regardless if I'm religious or not, maybe I have a moral compass. You're not going to ask somebody to just get rid of who they are. I mean, I'm religious, but I am who I am because of the religion I practice.
Right.
And I just can't leave that at the door. And besides, I asked them, I said, do you like who I am? They go, yeah, we like you. You're a good person. You're easy to talk to. You make decisions based on the conversations you have and your understanding. I mean, you've changed your mind on things. They kind of said, you know, we would like you. You're a good guy. And I'm like, well, I wouldn't be a good guy without that.
Yeah, I was like, that is a part of who I
Who
am.
I am,
Like, that's a part of
exactly.
the reason that you like me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's a part of my belief system. And my
Yeah.
belief system makes me who I am. So
That's exactly, it's a belief system.
Yeah.
And so I just thought there's no way I'm leaving that at the door. You know, that's not, I wouldn't be who I am. I'm not perfect. I'm flawed. You know,
Right.
I've got,
Aren't we all?
yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, I try to bring that optimism. I feel like I'm centered. I feel like I'm also, because of my background, I grew up in Alaska, where, you know, the mentality there was help everybody around you. You know, look for things to do to help out. I also, you know, I was not rich when I grew up. I understand what it's like to be poor. I understand what it's like to have a hope, and desires and all these other things. And because of that, I think that it helped me to understand and empathy for a lot of different people, a lot of different groups and issues.
Yes.
I was always amazed when somebody would reach out and say, "Hey, we want to endorse you," and I go, "Well, okay." And I never thought, it's the my favorite is Yvette Williams with the Clark County Black Caucus.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's like, she endorsed me in 2 different races, and she said, we always get a little flack for endorsing you. They're like, that guy? And she's like, yeah. He says, he does. He doesn't just talk. He does what he says he's going to do, and he does it. And she said he votes on a lot of our issues the way we would like him to vote. And why am I not going to endorse him? And I know a lot of people would go, wow, that relationship. And I go, I love Yvette Williams to death because she, just loves her community and loves to try and help out. And if we didn't see eye to eye on something, she was like, okay, well, what can we do to change this? I mean, I love the energy she brought. And so that's the kind of stuff that made me feel like I was connected to something, right? Because they looked at me and said, here's a guy that, we can trust.
Right.
So I enjoyed that. But I spent 2 years on a mission, and I learned right away that the world doesn't revolve around me.
Right.
That was the one thing. My first takeaway is there's a big world out there, with a lot of needs, and if you just get involved and help other people out, you're going to find out who you are.
Right. No, beautiful, and I personally live by that. My grandparents always taught me that. My mom, dad, just help out others. Give back, and one, it's gonna come back to you in ways that you don't expect it, and then 2, like I said, it's gonna show you who you are and make you a better person at the end of the day. So like how you were saying earlier, we all have multiple gigs. This morning I just got done playing flag football, and yes, I'm out there reffing and stuff, but at the same time, I'm looking in ways that I can help these kids get better at the sport that they're playing. Even if it's something as simple as, hey, before you run your route, you need to drop your butt so you can, go to the left faster, or they kept dropping the ball. They're literally running and dropping the ball, like it's just falling out. So I'm like, okay, everybody stop, look, 4 points, and trying to show them how to hold the ball or hold it like this. Now let's keep going and get the game going. But
And then you see one of them do it.
you see one of them do it.
You're like, man, there was a difference.
Exactly, and that's exactly what happened. I saw the one kid, he had a wide open touchdown, he just dropped it. And then after the next play, same thing happened, he ain't dropping it no more. So it's like, there we go. Nice and simple. So I love giving back.
Look for ways to help out.
It's all about giving back,
Yeah, and you do find out who you are. You always find out who you are. It just kind of, it shines you a little bit,
Exactly. I love it. So for this portion, I kind of wanted to open up to Instagram Live. I didn't know if Mr. Producer, if anybody has sent any questions in that we would like to ask.
It'll be interesting.
Or Mr.
We've got
CEO.
viewers, but we haven't seen any questions.
No?
Well, now that you told them, they probably will start pouring in some questions.
Well, I actually
What's
did
the most
have
embarrassing moment?
Well, I actually did have a question from Instagram.
I can see somebody saying, "What was it? One thing you voted for? You wish you hadn't voted for."
So the one question I had was from Mr. BC. Shout out BC from BC Playground. His question was, I want to say this the most professional way I can possibly say it. Do you feel that minorities have disadvantages when it comes to the government and being democratic? Because we feel that sometimes being democratic doesn't work for us. So I was just curious on how you feel about seeing that situation. Do you feel minorities are, being democratic doesn't assist us pretty much, doesn't help us out? Do you agree with something like that? Do you see things like that?
Look, it's hard. It's a hard question to answer, and I'm trying to. I see that in the world we live in now, it's even different than the world I lived in when I was a kid. I watched Zoom. I watched, Big Blue Marble. I watched all these things that said, hey, broaden your scope. There's a whole bunch of people out there who aren't just like you, right? The one thing that we have, and I'm not convinced that legislation is what you need to create unity or parallel in this environment, in our culture, in our society. I'm not sure if legislation is one of those things. It's just sometimes it takes time, right? I know that they asked Morgan Freeman that question one time about racism. He's like, don't talk about it, right? It's not there because it's not, right?
No, it's not. Yeah. I mean, look at the room right now.
Yeah.
Look at the room.
Yeah.
I'm loving it.
And for me, but half my, when we adopted Isabella, it was because her mom said, I loved your rainbow family. And I'm like, okay. And I said that on tweet one time, and everybody jumped down my throat. Oh, so he's talking about a rainbow family. He thinks he's going to get. I'm like, no, that's what she said. It wasn't me who said it. My last daughter is full on Alaskan Native, and the birth mother said, "I love your family," and to me, it's because the times have changed, and I see that happening. Where I see a need is that this is what's true, is that you see, and they call it the good old boys network, right? But it's not necessarily, I don't know if you can call it that. It's just that when you get hired to do a job and you look around, you're like, I need help in my job. You look to those people you are around a lot, and you're like, hey, I know you. Why don't you come? Why don't you apply for the job? We need to have more diversity, and we get that as we start seeing more and more people getting into these jobs that are backgrounds are different, right?
Yes.
I tend to look at, I surround myself with a whole bunch of different people. My family is completely different. My son is 100% Mexican. My daughter, my oldest daughter is 50% Mexican, and 50%, well, she wouldn't say Mexican, she'd say Latino or Latina, because she really is embracing her 1% Italian. She's embracing. I think she's like, maybe Olivia will remember this, but I think she's like 1% Moroccan, and she's like, oh, I like a little bit black. Like, all right, so she's
Embracing it all, though.
Oh, she's embracing it all. She loves it. She dreads, but also looks with anticipation when have you done one of those tests yet?
No, I haven't done
No,
it yet.
I haven't yet,
My nieces actually just got it, so I think they're waiting for the results. And then
Who?
what? Mariah and I.
Okay.
Yeah.
They both did it.
Yeah, they both did it.
So what happens is you get the results, right?
Uh-huh.
And then sometimes 6 months, 7 months, a year later, they change the results because they get more samples from other people, right? They get more samples and they refine. And so, she went from being 1% Italian to being 0, and then she got it back again, and she celebrated again. She's like, okay, I am. And, so it changes from time to time, and there's ups and downs. But, I just see that, to his question, I don't know if, again, democracy, the government, is going to create the society we need. What we need are people changing. And I know that if you're talking about, black versus white, brown, all those things, in about 100 years,
It's not gonna matter.
Yeah, we're all going to be looking pretty similar, yeah.
and the only reason why there were so many differences is because the world was so siloed for so long.
Yeah,
right?
you was always separate. Everything's separate.
Mountain ranges separated one culture from another culture, and the sad thing is, as we become more homogenized, is that some of the culture that was developed is going to die away, right? Right? You're not going to see the stark differences.
And I feel like that's going to be like another hiccup because some cultures are going to be struggling to let go of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's when we have to come to kind of like the Jackson family right now. We have to learn how to blend it and make it work for us, And it calls, we got to celebrate 2 weeks before Christmas to get all the family together. We'll do that, but we do whatever we have to do to make it happen. And
that's kind of the struggle that the United States is going through right now, right? We're trying to get through, but a lot of times there's going to be those people who are trying to stir things.
Stir the pot.
And they're the ones who are stirring. Who's stirring the pot? That's what you need to look for. Is like who's stirring the pot? Because for me, living day to day, I'm just trying to get along with everybody I meet. I'm trying to find the common thread that we all have, right? And have those conversations with everybody. And then there is that moment though where you also, I think you have to mourn sort of the loss of some things. I grew up in Alaska. For the most part, I was a military brat. I moved everywhere, but by the time I was in high school, it was Alaska. And at some point during my high school career, there were 2 or 3 ladies in Southeast Alaska who spoke Tlingit. They were the last ones to be able to speak, and when they died, that language was gone, right?
Oh wow!
And I hope I got that right. I know somebody might call in and go, hey, that's not true. But I'm pretty sure it was Tlingit that language died out with those ladies. And I know some people can speak a little bit, but they couldn't
Fully speak like they could.
fluently like these 3 or 2 ladies. And I wasn't cognizant of the whole wide world when I was in high school. I just remember that I had that thought like, wow, that was significant, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was sad. It was like it's gone.
Yeah.
And so I've always thought it's a shame. My generation, or maybe the generation before me, when their kids moved to the United States, the parents are like, you can't speak Spanish, you can't speak this, you gotta
Now
speak.
they don't know it.
And I thought, what a shame, because a lot of them can't speak, right? They couldn't speak. And I'd like to embrace that. I want them to be able to speak all these different languages.
Mm-hmm.
And I found I was a little saddened by that. But now, you see it all the time. Now you're kind of hoping, well, you got to learn some English when you move here.
Yeah.
There's sort of that pendulum swung too far to the side. Like,
Right.
You got to speak a little bit.
Right. Understandable. I think we had a question from the IG.
So my question was pertaining to the 50,000 jobs. If somebody was coming out of high school right about now trying to get a job, is there any suggestions on stuff that they could do pertaining to getting into that field?
Yeah, that's a great question. So every year, the Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance, LVGEA, they're a nonprofit sort of quasi-governmental agency. They put together, in conjunction with Workforce Connection and Nevada Works, which are our workforce panels, Southern and Northern, they put together a list, Blueprint 2.0, 2.1, 2.2. They put out a list of all the high in-demand jobs that are out there and that they anticipate will be out there for 5, they project out like 2, 3, 4, 5 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that blueprint is really important to look at. And when you talk to your high school counselor, ask, are you looking at this blueprint? Are you judging what might be out there? Because you want to get into something. I can tell you right now, if you're going to be a cosmetologist, there are a ton of cosmetologists out there, and you probably won't have a lucrative career. And I apologize if that's your passion, but there are certain jobs that we just don't have. We don't need the capacity. We already have. We're at full capacity.
Right.
But those are the jobs. If you go on there, we're starting to look at that. For that 50,000 jobs we were talking about, I talked to the Mining Association. What they need are a lot of chemical engineers.
Yeah.
So there's not a dearth of chemical engineers out there, and in that particular field, they know for sure that that's one of those jobs that they're going to need. And then there's some other ones out there that we will post. If you want to work for this company, this is the area you want us to concentrate on. This is the job you want to get, and this is how you get it. We'll put that in our platform if we develop that platform. But that Blueprint 2.0 is really.
Can you name the site again, or the sheet that you were looking at again?
Yeah, it's the LVGEA has it on their website. It's the Las Vegas Economic Global Alliance. Tina Quigley heads that up. If you look at it, they have this blueprint. They call it the blueprint. I think the first time I saw it was Blueprint 2.0, and I think there might have been like 3 or 4 iterations since then. They're trying to update it a lot.
Got you.
Right on.
Cool. Yeah, just wanted to make sure we share that. All my younger listeners, go check that out.
Go check it out. I mean, that's the thing, is it's a pathway. You really want to see what is a path, not just getting the skills, but a pathway to
The actual
that first
steps you
job.
need. Yeah.
And then from there, once you get that job and you're making, 50, 60, 70,000 a year, then you can start looking at, what comes next.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the idea is that, I heard this too. I'll share this one last thing. I thought it was really cool. I heard this talk, and they said that, and again, I've never really followed up on it. I just remember these things. I hear them, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. The University of Michigan was one of the first universities to accept people for life. They don't just say, hey, you're enrolled, you're admitted for 5 or 6 years, because that's usually what happens, right?
Yeah.
You're admitted for a certain amount of time as long as you're
Taking classes.
Term out
Term
credits,
classes.
12 credits.
At
a
least
year,
part-time or something.
Yeah, there's all those requirements, right? And then you're admitted. Well, the University of Michigan said, no, you're admitted, and you're admitted for life, because they understand that as the economy, as it's constituted now, if AI takes a portion of your work, right? They take a portion of your
yeah.
jobs, your skills, then you're going to have to skill up.
Right.
And so that's what they're contemplating. All right, come back to the university, get another certificate. UNLV is really working on certifications, micro-credentialing.
I believe University of Phoenix is doing that as well, because at least I know once I started and once I graduate, I'll still have access to the library and everything as an alumni, and I can always go back to get like my master's, my
Yeah.
doctorates, or get another field if necessary.
Get what you need.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love
so,
it.
and that's gonna have to happen a lot, right?
Mhm.
And you're somebody who wants to sharpen your skills or learn new things.
Yes.
You put that on your wallet, your digital wallet, you have that available so you can show people what you can and can't.
And I think, well, again, bringing up University of Phoenix again, like as you're going through the classes, they're giving you like little badges and stuff that you can put on LinkedIn to let you know,
Oh,
hey,
wow.
I'm certified, or
This.
I'm certified in this,
That.
or proficient in this. I have this skill set. So anybody that's looking, even though you haven't graduated yet, you still have those skill sets to put
Right.
onto your profile.
And that's something that right now it's sort of the wild, wild west, right? With these micro credentials
Yes.
and certifications and things like that. One university will say, hey, you just do this and this will be it. Another university, it might be a different set of criteria to get that credential.
Mhm.
It'll take time before we all kind of say, hey, no, this is universally accepted. This is what we do. This badge, this little token, or whatever it is, right? I think that's going to work itself out as we go forward. But it is definitely on the mindset of a lot of universities, higher ed, and a lot of other people. That's this idea of micro credentialing and making sure you have, skills.
Mhm.
Right. Love it.
Yeah.
Mr. T, I think we had an online
All
question.
right, so we've got 2 questions from Magics in the Air. The first one is, can you tell us the best way to communicate with senators to get our needs resolved and addressed? And the second one to that is, commenting on what you guys are just talking about, do you think there's a chance that bachelor's degrees could become irrelevant?
Okay, so the first question was how to get in touch with senators.
Yeah, so first of all, you're in the state of Nevada, which is a little different from the state of California or a lot of other places. Your elected officials are very approachable, and they're accessible. Approachable and accessible. You have lots of access to them, and they're approachable because they're genuinely nice and they understand that. You're going to meet them in the grocery store. You're going to meet them in events.
For people.
They're people.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you look at either go to the state website, which is Nevada, just Google Nevada Legislature, it has a website. A lot of times it'll have different ways to communicate. Cell phones, a lot of times. They'll have emails, and they'll have phone numbers for the legislative building, but of course they're not there now, right? Because we're only there every other year.
Right.
I had a phone in my office. The only time it rang once in like 12 years.
Oh wow.
And I had it hidden behind something. I put it behind. I had a record player up there, so it was behind my records and my record player. And I was talking to my legislative assistant, and all of a sudden there was a ring, and we're like, "What's that?" And then we finally, I dug through it and finally got it like in the 5th ring or 6th ring, and I said hello, and they're like, "Hey, I'm looking for so and so." I'm like, "Oh, this is
Wrong
you got
number."
the wrong number. You got the wrong number, man.
Wow.
Yeah, but then but I had my cell phone, and I get phone calls. I got this guy who was originally from Buffalo, New York, and he calls up and he goes, "Hello, I'm looking for Senator Hammond," and I said, "This is Senator Hammond." And there was like no blank. There was like silence on the other end. He hung up.
Wow.
He hung up.
Like he didn't actually expect to talk to you.
Yeah. When he called back in a few minutes, and I said, "Is this the guy that was just called me?" He said, "Yeah." He goes, "I'm sorry I hung up on you, but I wasn't expecting you." He's like, I was, if I'm in New York, back in New York, I have to go through 3 or 4 different people before I got to
The actual person, yeah.
legislator. And he goes, I just didn't expect it. Well, I'm not unique. I'm not the unicorn here, because a lot of my fellow legislators are like that. They all pick up. They all will call you back. Not always, but a lot. I mean, you have a lot more access to these people. So find those numbers. Go to their personal websites, their campaign websites. A lot of times they'll have phone numbers to call. You should be able to get a hold of them. I think my phone number's still out there like a rash. It's I'll get people go, "Hey, there it is. You're right." Because I'll talk to somebody somewhere else, and they're like, "Hey, I think I've heard of you," and they look it up, and then I'm like, and I can see it on their face, like, "Oh, they found me," and I'm like, "Oh man." Like, this is you, and I'm like, "Yeah, that's me."
Love it.
So, and now the other question was,
The bachelor degrees becoming irrelevant.
No, I don't think that they will become irrelevant. Again, it depends on what you want to do. It's just, over the last 30 years, we got to this point. Remember, we started getting rid of, in high schools, we used to have shop class and metal shop and automotive.
I
and
wish we did.
We had all those
Yeah.
things, right?
Yeah.
And then everybody said, no, everybody's gotta go to college, and we made this big push for everybody to go to college, right? And then again, the prices were soaring, because matter of economics, right? It's supply and demand, you start sending to everybody, and then the prices are gonna go up, you have to hire more professors, open more colleges, there's not enough space,
Right, more
whatever.
dorms, yeah.
And so there was this big push for that. Just because the economy is changing doesn't mean that everything is going to be micro-credentialed. You're still gonna have to have a degree in something when it comes to engineering, when it comes to being a doctor, when it comes to law, when it comes to, there's still gonna be a lot of people. When the universities were first contemplated, and I don't know if I'm going too far back, but University of Virginia and Thomas Jefferson always kind of looked at a university education as a way to be well-rounded, right? Develop that well-roundedness. But at the same time, what did they have back then when it came to work? They had a,
Building houses or, farming. And
but if
things
you were
like
going to build
that,
a house, somebody had to show you, right?
Yes.
And so they had an apprentice program. They had apprentices,
You're
right?
right. Yeah.
And that's how people got jobs. They apprenticed, blacksmiths, they all had apprentices, and they all learned, right? And so the university was a little bit different. And so you're still gonna have a bachelor's degree in some things, they won't be irrelevant, you're still well-rounded. I find that my university degree, even though I don't get paid as much as my colleague who was a plumber, a Senate colleague who was a plumber, and he made a whole heck of a lot more money in his life than I did with my master's. But I found that my master's aided me during my legislative career. I just became well-rounded. I could talk about a little about almost any subject. I've got enough knowledge in those areas, right? But, it's not irrelevant. I still think that if it's your passion, like we said earlier, if you have a job and you realized in order to go higher in your job, you need a bachelor's degree, go back and get that bachelor's degree. But don't go get a bachelor's degree to go get one. I foresee a time where not every 18-year-old leaves high school and goes right into college. I see, them going, hey, 23, 24, I have an idea what I want now, maybe even later, that kind of thing.
No, and that's exactly what I did. I graduated high school and ran off to college. I got the degree to get the degree, but as y'all see, I'm not using my degree. My degree's in marketing, and I'm more of an accounting type person. I do accounting, auditing, coaching, all that.
Hey, you made the flyer for this live event.
Yeah, you did.
I'm now starting to use it. I'm now starting to use my degree 10 years later. I forgot all about
The
that.
story's changing.
It's now changing, but it took a while for me to start using it the way I use
You
it.
develop skills.
I developed my skills, and I started to understand how my skills work for me better.
Yeah.
And now I kind of wish I would have went back and be like, okay, I want to do this because I know this is what I want. So I truly agree.
Yeah. Hey, look, if you sit back and only get a degree and then sit back on your laurels and never
Use it.
develop another part of your abilities, what a waste, right?
And I think that's the beauty right there. A lot of people get to the point where once you get that education, you stop.
Yeah.
And I kind of how I say with the fraternity, going through the process of join is easy because once you done, that's when the real stuff starts. You have to do everything. Once you graduate college, that's when life starts, and you have to constantly grow still and get yourself better.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, if anything, the thing I took away the most from going to like an actual college campus at UNR was the connections I was just making with the people. Like,
There's so much truth in that.
Yeah, I mean, I still talk to some of my friends that I met up there. They're still close friends at that, and just being able to, I wish I knew what I wanted to do so I could stay there and just make more connections with people. Maybe not even just for professionalism, even though that would definitely help, but just creating personable connections with different people on a deeper level. Like with Fernando, yeah, I've known this man since middle school, but like when we went up to college, like that connection really happened, and there's so much fulfillment from that.
Right.
Connections and networking, right?
Yes.
Who you know.
Yes. And
So-
that's part of the reason why I got a couple of my jobs in the past. I think this is like my first really good job that I got without having a connection. And I'm able to be personable, and I met a couple people that I brought on the podcast because of my personal ability, just being a banker and just talking to people. Yeah, I'm an introvert, but I'm still able to just talk and kind of figure out people.
What a skill set to have, especially today when people would rather just pick up a phone or text.
Yes.
To be able to actually have a conversation with somebody.
And thank God I work at a bank where it is like we're focused on personal instead of hey, like you can make a bank account online. Like, no, come in. Like, I need to talk to you. I need to see your papers and stuff.
When I thought this was an amazing conversation I had with my 16-year-old Sophia. Sophia said, Dad, you can talk to anybody. She goes, I watched it. She goes, I can't talk to that many people. I just don't know what to say. Can you teach me that skill? She recognized it as a skill.
Yeah,
It's
that's
beautiful skill. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a
Well,
beautiful skill.
if I may ask, like, what would you say if that would, or what did you say, or what would you say to the audience that feels like they struggle with just being more personable and things like that?
Well, I kind of use I try to break the ice a lot of times by saying something that brings some levity to it. But a lot of times I'm just looking for something that we might have in common, right? And I saw that the president of the Nevada State University, she came to my office and she's like, "You throw records?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I got some records in here." And she goes, "Well, who's your favorite?" I said, "Aretha Franklin." And she's like, "Oh." We got something. This is, Pollard, and President Pollard's like, okay, what else do you? I mean, so we went through my record. We talk about these, and she loves, the vibe that comes out of my room. So I look for a connection. It's not the same thing with everybody.
Right.
If I notice an accent from somebody, I'm like,
Where's that from?
Where you
hey,
from?
where you from? I mean, I'm genuinely interested. Nowadays it's like, oh, where's your accent? We got to kick you out. I'm like, I try not to be alarming like that. I try to disarm people and just have real conversations with them. And I just try to find that common thread that we can start a conversation with and then move on to things. And I told my daughter all the time, just look for something that you see. Like, today we have neighbors that we've lived next to. We're renting, so we're not going to be there much longer. But I saw them put a sticker on the back of their truck about donating a kidney. And they had a little ribbon and everything like that. I'm like, try to be funny. I'm like, hey, you can't just put stickers on people's cars. And they're like, oh, it's ours. I'm like, I know what you do. I know you guys. I see you all the time. I've never had a conversation. So I actually had a conversation. He had just donated a kidney 3 months ago.
Oh wow.
She was a donor. And so that's one of their passions. And so I started talking about things that I know about that world, right? Because I know a doctor in town who's part of the Nevada, the donor network and other things. So I have a conversation with them and kind of get to know them.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So I know we actually running low on time here. So I know we have another question from the Instagram Live, and then we're gonna go into our end game after this last question.
I hope it's an easy one, like, walks on the beach.
Do you like those?
No, it's not that easy.
Look at it. Wait,
By the way, those last two questions were by your guys' sister, Tiara.
Oh,
really?
really?
Yeah,
Oh.
Magic's in the air.
Is she the one Is she the one waiting for her results?
Oh no,
No,
those are her
her
daughters.
kids.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Shout out Nia and Mariah. Nia, I hope you're paying attention.
Okay, cool. So this last question is from Afro Latina, and I'll kind of like summarize it.
Oh, Miss
for-
Lydia. Miss Lydia.
Okay, Miss Lydia. Cool. So Miss Lydia, she's talking about Democrat, or the way I translate it is Democrats getting a bad rep, and basically, what advice would you give for people who are Democrats that are like losing faith in their party? I know you were Republican, so I don't know if there's a bias or anything, but just what you would think about party switching, or how would you like even go about it or look at it? How would you comment on that?
So one of the things I always like to talk about is, Washington, when he left office, he actually cautioned people and said, be aware, be cautious of party. Because, we get too wrapped up in the message of the party and not the individual.
Yeah.
My best friend in the legislature before I left was a Democrat. She and I, you talk about how you approach somebody, how do you start a conversation. She sat next to me in 2021. I was in my seat on the floor of the Senate, and her seat was next to me. And she leaned over and she said, I hear you like baseball. That was the start of a beautiful friendship.
Right.
And now I talk to her all the time. She was in my office yesterday. I care more about the individual. I really want people to ask more questions of their representatives. Find out what they believe in, right? Find out if they're good people. I'd rather have a whole bunch of good people up there and be independent,
Right.
and find out what's good for the state of Nevada. Don't lose faith in people. maybe your party, maybe you can lose faith in your party and you're still gonna be able to survive. But don't lose faith in people. Find the right people, and sometimes they're gonna be independent. I think that there are more and more independents out there than ever before.
I feel like it's
Right.
going to be growing a lot more, or these upcoming years as well.
Because too many times I think people are, don't wanna be defined. I mean, for the most part, historically, in the last 30 years, the black community has said, hey, we identify with the Democrat Party. And now they're going, do we?
Yeah.
Do I, and why? What is the reason I identify with them? Go back and look at yourself and say, well, who should I identify with?
Right.
Is it independent? Is it Republican? Is it Democrat? Look, and just because I am Republican doesn't mean I look through the lens of everything Republican, because when you legislate, folks, when you legislate, you don't have the luxury of looking at party line stuff. You have to be a statesman. You have to rise above that and go, you know what, I may not like this, but if you change this and this, then I could probably vote for that. And they go, yeah, I can change that. That was my good friend, and this is Senator Lang, Roberta Lang. I'll shout out to Senator Lang. She'd always come to me and say, hey, I really want this legislation. I really feel passionate about it. I think it's going to help us move the needle in education or whatever it might be. She goes, is the way it's written, is it going to get through your caucus? And I'd say, no, it's, this right here is problematic for them. She goes, oh, but that, I can change the language. What can we change it to? Or I can get rid of that part. I mean, she was pragmatist, right?
Yeah.
And so don't lose faith necessarily in people, I hope. I hope that if you do lose faith in people, vote for somebody else, regardless of party.
Right.
And find that person that represents who you are.
Right.
Like I said, that when Yvette Williams would endorse me all the time, people were like, wait a second, he's a Republican. How are you doing this? He's a white guy, how could you? She's like, he's a guy who understands,
Right.
and I did. Like I said, because of my upbringing, I can empathize with a lot of different groups. I just knew. I went through a lot of that stuff, and so I think that party influence is kind of waning because people are starting to wake up and go, it's the individual I have to look at. I need to ask more questions of that person, not.
Because I was going to say, I feel like a lot of people just, not only with like politics, but just in life too, we get so wrapped up in this label, and then we knowingly or unknowingly kind of put ourselves in a box in these boundaries. And it's like, we're not just limited to that. We're so much more on the inside, and we have different views, and we can, agree on some things even though our label is different.
I mean, and then my mindset is always the idea of all the things that are grandfathered onto you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like you said, me being born a black male, when you go vote, you vote Democrat. That's it. Don't even think about who the Republican is. You just do that, and it's like, I need to start thinking for myself. It's kind of like I always find it funny. It's like the kid that he likes the Lakers. You'd be like, why are you a Laker fan? 'Cause my dad's a Laker fan. My grandfather's a Laker fan. His great fan, and we're just Laker fans in this family. But you don't like nobody on the team that plays for them. But you're gonna stick with this team because you have to. You feel you have to. And I feel like that's probably a similar way with Democrats, I guess, right? Or democracy, I'm guessing.
But having said that, now I feel like I have to disclose that my kids are all like Yankee fans because my daughter Olivia, her first full sentence, with a verb and a subject was "Let's go Yankees."
Oh wow!
So
So I was vice versa. My dad was he was a 49er fan, and he was a Lakers fan. So I went to Boston Celtics. I was straight opposite. I went straight opposite. I'm like, who's making you more mad?
Oh.
It was more entertaining for me. Him watching the games was very entertaining.
I met somebody like that when I went to Boston. I went to a Yankee Red Sox game in Boston. There were some other Yankee fans sitting next to me, and I'm like, "Oh, you came up from New York?" He goes, "No, I'm from here." I go, like, "You moved up here?" He goes, "No, I'm from here." I'm
Yeah,
like,
my whole life.
What the? And his two sons were in Red Sox, and he was in the Yankees. He was like, "I just have always loved the Red Sox or the Yankees." And I'm like, "Dude, how did you survive?" He goes, "Not very well."
Not very hard. Not very easy.
Yeah.
No, I understand that. 'Cause
There's a deep hatred. I don't know if you know, there's a deep hatred for Yankees. I mean, I walked the stadium. The Yankees weren't even playing one time. I went to see the Red Sox play. I think they were playing, I want to say Cleveland or something like that. And there was a girl with a T-shirt that said, even Jesus hates the Yankees or
Wow.
something like that.
That's egregious.
That way getting personal like that.
The Yankees weren't even there, you know? They weren't even at that stadium that night.
Yeah. No, I understand. Cause I went to UNR for school,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll never forget the day my frat brother went downstairs to pick up a package. Dorm room, elevator, pick up package, back up elevator. Mario went downstairs with that UNLV shirt on, and when he came back up, he took the shirt off. Like, I can't wear this ever again walking around this campus because they just kept coming at my head. And I'm like, man, you didn't leave the dorm room there. Like, that's crazy.
You down to the second floor.
Man, down to the second floor, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So, so one of my questions I want to end with is, I see that you do a lot. You've done a lot. You've been coaching. You've been teaching. You know, you went from senator to director of Owen. So I'm just curious on like, what do you do to keep yourself growing personally? Like, what are some of the personal growth things that you do? I know you're good with your religion. I'm sure you hold on to that. But like, besides that, what do you do?
Well, you know what I do. You know, I have a calling in the church, right? You know, I'm in what they call the High Council there, and so there's a lot of opportunity for me to give back, and we do a lot of projects, and that's one way. But I get calls from a lot of different organizations saying, "Can you help me with this or that?" I'm a big supporter of this thing called the Collaboration Center. That is an organization run by a good friend of mine named Linda Taché. They do a lot in autism, right? I love that. The United Way has reached out to me and said, "Can we collaborate on things?" I have a hard time saying no to people. My wife says, "You do that. You spread yourself out." But in a good way, yeah.
In a good way, yeah.
In a good way, and it's one of the things that they use me for is that they always say, "Hey, we just know that you know a lot of people," and so I'm always connecting people, and that's a good thing to be a connector.
Yeah.
You know, in the job that I did when I was working for the Nevada Contractors Association, they had me doing a lot of it, you know, stuff for workforce. But the reality is, you know, my boss, Milan over here, she would say, "Hey, do you happen to know this person or that person? Do you know somebody who's over in this area?" I said, "Yeah," because, you know, there's skills, and one of the skills I have is also that electronic Rolodex that I have. I just know a lot of people.
Yeah.
And that's a commodity that can be sold if, you know, sometimes because people will say, "I need you to work for me because I know that you know a lot of people." And that's one of the things. But the Collaboration Center, I love that organization. I've worked for them. And Hope for Prisoners, John Ponder. I haven't done a lot with him lately. But when he started off, I did a lot of stuff with him. I'm passionate about his job. I don't know if you guys know anything about Hope for Prisoners, but this is a guy who he makes sure that as people are leaving the institution, that they have the ability to get a job,
Right.
but they have a mentor with them. His program is amazing, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's gotten awards from former presidents. I mean, he's just done a great job. And so there's certain things around town, and I'll be honest, there's a lot of things I like to get involved in that actually help the whole community out. And I love doing that. I'm more behind the scenes guy and that kind of stuff. I don't like to tell people I'm doing things. And so when they call me out, I'm like, oh man,
I don't want this award.
yeah, I don't need the accolades. I just like doing it because I see the results of it, right?
Right.
And I love it. I remember, and I know you guys run short on time.
Oh no, you're good.
One of the last things that happened when I was, I think it was 2021, we were trying to get out of session. What we call, a closing out session. And sometimes the closing out session is, how do we, and what deals need to be made so that everybody's satisfied and we can close out the budgets. The budget's the last things we kind of do. And that year there was a proposed mining tax. And I'm not a big proponent of raising taxes, but at the same time, the mining people were saying we want to be taxed. We understand that at some point we needed to change the tax structure. We want this. Gaming was, they said this is a good thing, and so they wanted it. They just needed a couple of senators on the Republican side to say yes, and they had one, and they needed one more. And I'm like, I don't want to raise more taxes, so they're like, yeah, but what is it we can do? What kind of deal can we make? What can we trade? And I said, well, my price would be high. This is what I want. I talked about school choice, right? I really want school choice. And anyway, it took a long time, but they finally said, well, can you do this? And I said, no, if you guys put this scholarship in this thing right here, I'll vote for it. They came back a day later and said, if we do that, we get your vote, but we lose 2 votes on the other side. And I said, oh, that's a you thing. That's not a me thing. She's like, oh, come on, Senator. And I'm like, that was because I was dealing with the chief of staff back then. And she's like, come on, Senator. And I said, look, you put 2 people in a room that I know, One of them was actually the treasurer, Zach Conine. I said, you put him in the room because he's really a smart guy.
Mhm.
He's not a guy in my own party, but I know that he's a smart guy, and I know he knows how to get things done when it comes to the financing.
Mhm.
And then I said, put another good friend of mine, Don Soifer, who runs this thing, it's the micro schools academy. He does a lot of micro schooling nationwide, national micro schooling, and he knows a lot about school policy. I said, you put those two together, and they'll come up with a program that fits. My main concern was that during COVID, a lot of kids with learning disabilities really suffered. I mean, all
Right.
kids suffered,
Yes.
right? Everybody suffered across the
Yes.
board, but especially those kids who need to be in front of a teacher.
Mm-hmm. Your
Because
hands on.
Extra assistance, yeah.
They do. They need that, right?
Yeah.
That's the way they learn. They suffered a lot. And I said, I really want to do a program where their families are going to get money and then have the flexibility to use that money in certain ways. And they came up with a program. They gave it to me, and I tweaked it a little bit, and then I said, that's it.
Mm.
And I said, all right, I'll vote for that if you guys put money into that program.
Mhm.
They did. And about 2 years later, I was going around. I was visiting a couple of micro schools, and this one lady who's running the micro school said, this student and this student came because they got this thing called the TOTS program, and that's the program that we started
Okay.
as TOTS.
Yeah.
And they said that's why they're here to the school, and their learning has increased threefold.
Mhm.
And they're talking about it, and I just had that moment where, it was a moment when I thought, okay, that's the result of me. And I remember I had prayed, because I knew things were going to happen at the end. I had prayed that I would do the right thing. I'd been praying for days, making sure I was going to be used the right way, and I was listening and making the right decision when I needed to make the right decision. I mean, those are, how you got sometimes you have the prayer in your heart at
Yeah.
all times, and it just kept saying to me, this is it right here. And so when people would come up, and 5 years later, someone came up and said, hey, there's this TOTS program. This is what it does. Do you have anything to do with that? Because they know my background. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, yeah. It had your fingerprints all over it. It's wonderful.
Beautiful.
It's wonderful. And so that's one of the things that
You keep giving.
I keep
Yeah.
giving.
You keep giving in all aspects.
Yeah.
I love it.
If you put yourself out there, people will use you in the right
Mhm.
way, and you find out who you are.
Right.
Talk about that, right?
That's beautiful. That's beautiful, Cinder. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
I love it. So, being on the Just Keep Swimming podcast, I always like to end with 2 questions for every guest that we have. So my first question is, where are you still swimming to when it comes to your career, life, family, all these roles you play? Like, where are you still swimming to when it comes to that aspect of life?
Well, I'll tell you, family. I don't know if you don't have kids yet, or do you have kids?
I don't know.
Okay, no kids. Once you're a father, you're always a father, right? And so I've got a 24-year-old son, and I'm still thinking about him every day, still worried about him every day. I mean, my goal is to make sure I put humans out there that are good people. Right.
Beautiful.
That's the thing. You want to put people who are not going to be, that are not going to drain the system. They're going to add to the system. They're going to add to the community. They're going to be an asset to the community. They're going to be nice to people, and I want that. I really hope for that. Career-wise, I love what I'm doing right now, and I might be used in another way. I might run for office again. I don't know. I spent the better part of 13 years giving back to the community, which I not begrudging that. I loved it. But at some point, those were some of the highest earning years of my life, and I didn't earn a lot. And so I got to go out there and make some money so that my wife and I, are taken care of in our retirement at some point.
Right.
I figure I'll be probably working in my 70s, but that's only because I really like what I do.
Right.
Yeah.
And you make an impact still,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you're still impacting people.
I mean,
So-
that's still fulfilling more than anything. Right?
Yeah.
So.
It's just that 70 is around the corner for me. It's not that far.
Sorry about that. I think I thought it was.
It's close. I've been working in my 70s, but and so I'm always looking for opportunities. I love what I do, like I said, and if somebody says, hey, can you come work here, and I look at the value of working at that position, well, I love it when someone says, I like to say, hey, I do a lot of other things besides this. If I work for you, can I still do these other things? Can I help these other people? Because in a lot of ways, helping those other people are going to help me do the job for you better.
Exactly.
So I got that with the Nevada Contractors Association when I came here. I said, look, I still work with a lot of schools. Can I still do that? And they said, absolutely. You can still work with your nonprofit as well, which I did.
Beautiful.
And I still work, rising tides, they lift all the boats, man. That's what you got to do. You got to think more universally.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love that. And then my very last question I ask everybody is there a quote you'd like to leave us today that you may live by, that you feel that everybody should share?
So many good quotes out there. But I learned this quote a long time ago, and I still think of it once in a while. It's Thoreau, and he said, "As if you could kill time without injuring eternity."
Explain that to me.
Don't waste your time. People are like, I got to kill some time right now. I got time between here and there. But every time you're wasting time, there's that little bit that you can't take with you. You can't take anything with you when you go from this life except for what you learn.
Right.
And again, what you give back helps you to figure out who you are. And if you're not giving back, if you're just killing time, you're injuring eternity.
Right.
And so I just always like that.
Beautiful, beautiful. You're killing time, you're
Injuring.
injuring eternity. That's beautiful. I love that.
I never had it verbalized like that. But yeah, that's kind of been on the back of my head recently too. I'm just like,
What are you doing with your time?
yeah, like
This
what
is
else can I
beneficial.
be doing? Yeah.
And I feel bad because, right now there's an epidemic of 25, 26-year-olds that are out there gaming all day. And I know that you're probably getting value out of that. But I told my son, because when he came to visit, he brought his girlfriend with him, and we were playing games. And I'm like, and the next time he came to visit, he brought his game. And I said, I hope you don't do this all day when your girlfriend's over. He's like, no. I don't ever play games when she's over because I feel like, she's judging me or it's not, I got to spend time with her. And I'm like, oh, thank
Right.
goodness.
No, that's real. That's real. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of times I jump online, definitely when y'all invite me.
Yeah.
It's like, let me go talk to my brother and play the game with him. So
There's
I'm probably
something-
wasting time, but at the same time I'm bonding. So
Yeah.
I kinda bond.
Yeah, have a purpose to it, right?
Have a purpose to it, exactly.
Yeah, look, I'm not telling gamers that they're not having fun. I love gaming too. Nobody likes a one-person, a one-person shooter like I do. It's a stress relief,
Yes, it is.
But at the same time, I try not to make it a habit. That's why I don't have a gaming system at my house because my wife knows that I would get addicted to it like so fast.
Right.
So.
I love it.
Yeah.
So we're gonna add that quote in. Know your habits.
Yeah.
Stay away from.
So and the other thing I do is I'm reading all the time too.
And I'm
pick up a
just
book.
starting to pick up that more. Like I just went to Barnes and Noble with another friend, and I was like, reading's actually really cool. Let me get back into it because I was into it in middle school and then I lost it.
Go to those used bookstores, man. They have so much better deals than
Man,
really?
I'm probably reading 4 books.
Man, I'm gonna tell you right this. I go to the library because the library always have like books for sale, and they're like sell for like $5, and they're amazing books. So I've been going there and grab them. They have a lot of diamonds in the rough, so I go look for it for sure.
Okay.
Spend some time going through the books. I love it. I love an old bookstore where you can get dusty. My kids are like, I'm not going in there with you because you're not going to come out for like 2 hours.
2 hours.
What type of books you like?
I like biographies, but I also like history books. I like historical fiction also, like when they incorporate like a family in a scenario in a time, and they insinuate them in that time frame, and then kind of talk about the events that are going on and how it might impact the family. You kind of get a sense of what people felt like back then. So I like those as well. But right now I'm reading a book on the Battle of Fredericksburg. But I'm also reading a biography on F. Scott Fitzgerald. But I'm also reading a book on this. It's pretty interesting. They call it the 13th tribe. There was a whole nation of people who lived between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea and the Caucasus Mountains. That the Khazarian people, they all converted to Judaism at some point. And then at some point they all migrated up to like Poland in that area. So it's fascinating. So, I try to read like a chapter or 2 chapters in each book every single day, to kind of keep up. And then sometimes I just get really engrossed. I just finally finished a book on Custer and what happened at the Little Bighorn. Totally blew my mind because it wasn't just his perspective; it's from a lot of the Native American perspective.
Oh, wow.
And it brought a lot of stuff, and it was a great book. And I couldn't help it. As soon as I started getting into it, I stopped reading the other ones and just kept reading that until I got done.
I love it. So yeah, you guys get a book, buy some books,
Learn
Get into the
something.
books. Learn
Yeah.
something. Exactly. That knowledge is valuable.
Okay, I got another off the wall question.
Oh no!
Okay,
Are we run out? We run out of time?
I mean, he's
Has,
the CEO. I can't say nothing to him. If you got
Has
questions,
your position allowed you to any information about UFOs or Area 51 or anything like that that you can share with us?
No, it hasn't.
It hasn't, huh?
No, I can't answer.
I can't answer.
Somebody slipped that in there.
Waited right there.
It's like, dude, I didn't, that you can't answer, huh? No. Not that, no, I don't get that kind of privileged information. But if you're asking me about it, like I'm as fascinated as anybody else, because you know that this is a huge, the universe is growing, right?
Yeah.
And you know there's got to be something out there. Look, Heavenly Father, the Heavenly Father I believe in, He created worlds
Yeah.
without number, right? They're out there. Maybe there's a reason we haven't been able to communicate with them. You know, I'm fascinated just like anybody else. And I remember I went through a period where I read a whole bunch of books, learned about what they call flap zones, right? Where, you know, extraordinary activity happens in certain areas, like the Bermuda Triangle is a flap zone. You know, just little things like that, just strange things happen. I love that kind of stuff.
Me too.
I can read for hours on that kind of
I'm
stuff.
loving this.
Well, did you remember that program that was on? And I think I shared this with Ann a couple days ago. There was a program. There's a guy that used to broadcast out of Pahrump. He would do it like at 1 o'clock in the morning, and from an undisclosed area.
George Knapp.
That.
George
yeah,
Knapp,
that
yeah,
was
that
it.
guy.
Yeah. Late at night. But no, I don't know if it was him or another guy that did the UFO stuff. Or was it George that did the UFO stuff?
He did, yeah.
George Nat or Art
No.
Bell?
Art
Yeah,
Bell,
Art
that's
Bell,
what I'm
yeah, there
talking
you go.
about. Art, look at this. This boy grew up in Nevada. It would be late at night, you know, and people
Oh,
would
yeah,
listen to
AM radio for sure.
Yeah, Art Bell,
No,
and
no,
yeah, if he came on, I'm listening to him, right? Because it was almost he had this voice that brought you in, right? So it brought you in, and you started listening, and you're like, that's plausible.
That's beautiful.
Where is he at now?
He's dead.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's passed, yeah, for
Uh-huh.
sure, yeah.
You know, ship came and got him.
I mean,
His ship came in.
I'm just loving it because it's just like those questions right there, PJ, just showed you how much more human you really are.
Yeah.
You know, because like when I like I said, when we got the text saying, "Yo, the senator said it's a go for 5 o'clock on Saturday," I started jumping up and down like, "Okay, we're getting a senator," but then I got scared of like, "Whoa, this is a professional guy. Like, do I need a shirt and tie for this?" Like, I have no idea what to expect. And PJ was like, "Oh no, relax. He's cool, man." But at the same time, like you said, that title you carry is like powerful.
I get that.
You
I get-
know.
And there's a juxtaposition right there, right? There's that, you know, on one hand, I know that I have to be professional, and I do. And I take things seriously when I have to, but with a grain of salt, right? Because I don't take myself serious all the time.
Right.
And I know a lot of people, before I get there, and when I started working at the Nevada Contractors Association, all of a sudden, and the same thing, it happened when I became a vice principal at a school. Before I came in, everybody heard that I got hired, everybody heard that I was gonna come in, and there were people who were like, oh my gosh, they were so afraid of me. They were terrified. They thought I was coming in with, you know, a certain authority. I was like this draconian dude that was gonna lay down the law. And I would look at him with a sneer all the time, and I'm like, okay. So then they learned that's not true. He's like the funnest guy to be around, you know. Like he's a partying in himself, you know. You go with him, and like something's gonna happen, right? And the same thing I think happened here when I came to Nevada Contractors. I think there was a few people who were like, okay, who's this stuffy guy? Who's, you know? And then they quickly figured out that I'm not like that at all, and you know, and I enjoy my association with them. Matter of fact, they still say, hey, why don't you come to lunch once in a while? And I enjoy it because once I had a connection with people, and I really do, I care about people. I mean, I really like the whole staff that worked here at the Nevada Contractor. They're just a bunch of amazing people doing some amazing stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad you guys mentioned that. I try not to be stuffy. My kids are like, you know, they're like, you bring street cred to me, Dad? Because everybody finds out you do all this stuff, and then all of a sudden they meet you and they're like, that's not what I thought your dad was
That's
doing.
what be.
Yeah, because I'm sitting there playing games with it at night. You know, we're playing this game called, what was it? Salem.
Oh.
Have you played Salem?
No, I've heard about it, but no.
Oh, well, you have to close your eyes, and everybody has to pound the table because you know.
Oh, it's like a witch game.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I never did that.
But you know, they're like, I can't believe your dad was doing that, you know. And then and he yelled at us because I think they knocked over my cake. I'm like, dude, don't knock over my cake. You can go to my house, you can make fun of me, you can do all that, but don't knock over my
Okay,
cake.
yeah, you can do it with them sweets now.
Yeah. So like, yeah, he's human.
I love it, Senator.
Oh, Art Bell, Coast to Coast AM.
That's what it was. I love that. You're bringing richness to this. You're like, Art Bell, Coast to Coast. That was it.
Coast to
Man,
Coast AM.
that's
That
a
was
blast
a
from the
show.
past there.
Yeah.
As soon as you drove up, I was like, yeah,
And I
you guys
felt it.
cool.
And I felt it because I was sitting here and then all of a sudden I heard, yeah, I'm Scott. And I was like, That energy was just beautiful right now. This is gonna be a good interview. I can't wait for it.
The 80s sweater, I was like, as soon as he came out the car with that, I was like, this guy's cool.
Yeah. I told I said, should I get it? I go, a dress shirt on? She goes, no, go OG, Dad. OG 80s. She calls it OG 80s, and I'm like, all right. So this is it right here. This is the first university I went to, University of Alaska Fairbanks, the Flying Nanooks. Flying Nanooks.
Natics? What is that?
Nanook. A Nanook is I think it's Inuit for polar bear.
Flying polar bear.
Yeah, the flying polar bear. The reason, so we were the Nanooks. We're the Nanooks, but the hockey team is called the Flying Nanooks because when they go out on the ice, they fly from all. I mean, they're flying up and down. And we were Division I when it came to hockey. Division III, I think, or II in basketball and that kind of stuff. But hockey, we had some of the guys that played hockey at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, they played in the NHL. Matter of fact, I knew the guy that sat behind me and cheated in anthropology. You know who you are. He doesn't care because he won 2 Stanley Cups with the Devils, the New Jersey Devils. But yeah, he was sitting behind me. And I'm like, dude, next time get somebody who's going to get straight A's in anthropology because that wasn't me. A lot of other subject matter, yeah, but not anthropology. I got like a B-, I think.
Love it.
Yeah.
So, cool, Mr. I just want to say thank you so much, Mr. Scott, for joining us today. I appreciate all the questions. Thank you so much.
There's 100 people here, by the way.
There's so many people in here, by the way. Like, we have people outside the windows right now. People in the windows.
Like Good Morning America or whatever.
Like Good Morning America or whatever the MTV show was.
Yeah.
TRL.
There you go.
TRL, yeah.
There you go.
Request Live.
Hey man, that's what we got the ultimate producer.
It's like the comedic memory.
Yeah. So Mr. Scott, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate your time, taking the time out your day. I know we were a little over time than we expected, but it was fun the whole time from start to finish. So
Yeah, it was
thank
good
you
for me
so
too.
much for this. I truly appreciate this.
Oh, well, appreciate it. Adrian, right?
Yes.
And Donovan.
Yes.
Yep.
You guys are amazing. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. The energy you guys, you just allow me to be who I am. And
Yes, sir. No, I appreciate it. Thank you
Purpose
so much.
of the podcast, like, yo, we just want to learn you.
keep on swimming.
We'll do.
Keep swimming. And then also we're gonna make shouts in the room. It's a Tease Match production. Thank you so much again for producing another episode. Mr. Photos by Fernando, thank you so much for joining us again. I'm not sure what's your business name, but that's the business name now.
Photography.
Oh,
yeah.
photography. I like that.
Photography.
Photography. And of course, shout out to our CEO and the First Lady. We appreciate y'all so much for being here.
The First Lady. I love it. I am armed with new information.
Yes. Everybody out there listening today, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We truly appreciate you guys. Check out your Audible. If you haven't got your Audible book, we still giving out free books. Just Keep Swimming got you. We're gonna hook you up, get you free knowledge. But with that being said, I hope you guys have an amazing day, a marvelous afternoon, a splendid evening, and remember to
Just keep swimming.
Yes, sir. Take us out, Tease.